Hello and welcome to the introduction video for Season 3 of the Rekef League, or as I like to call it, Meet the Teams. If you've watched my recap video for the last day of Season 2, you already know a little bit of what's to come, because we have been growing quite a bit actually. As you can see here, we have 3 divisions of 8 players now. So we tripled in size from 8 up to 24. So before we get to actually meet the teams, let me tell you really quickly how this season is going to go. So we are, of course, sticking to our 2-week schedule, so that won't change. What we've come up with is Division 1 is pretty much at the head of the league, while Divisions 2 and 3 are side by side below that. So at the end of the season, the best players out of Divisions 2 and 3 will advance into Division 1, while the last players from Division 1 will go down into Divisions 2 and 3. It's probably going to be the best 2, I guess, which is the fairest way, I guess. And that's something we still have to decide on, but it's either the best 2 or the best 3. While the best 3 might sound good from an advancement perspective, it would mean that only the best 2 players out of Division 1 would actually stay in Division 1, and that might be a bit overkill for the players in Division 1. If even place 3 has to go down, basically. So I'm not really sure how we're going to do that yet, but we'll see about that. So this also means Division 1 does consist of all the players of Season 2, aside from one player who left the league after Season 2, so we do have one volunteer, and I want to point that out, it is a volunteer, to join Division 1 with a fresh team, but Divisions 2 and 3 consist entirely of fresh meat, new players, whatever you want to call them. So yeah, that is pretty much it. We did, or I did, randomize the groups here, so there is some tendencies here. And I think we can get into this. So let's take a look at Division 3. And Division 3 is very agility heavy. We have a lot of elves here. So first of all, let me mention one more thing. We have 2 teams that have, or 2 races that have 3 teams each. Every other race should have at maximum 2 teams. And that's something I found important, to set a bit of a race maximum, to not have a too one-sided race value, pretty much. It worked out pretty well because everybody worked with that, and it never was officially set, but it just worked out that way, that we have 3 Skaven teams and 3 Norse teams. Aside from that, we have only 2 teams at maximum, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So let's move on to the teams, and as you can see, we do have a very elf-heavy league here, with 2 Dark Elves, a High Elf team, a Wood Elf team, and then Skaven for agility, as well as Undead, Norse, and Bretonnians. So let us take a look at the first team, which is Post-Up Pamela Springsteen, a Dark Elf team coached by the Peacock. And what do we have here? We have 3 Blitzers, a Witch Elf, and 2 rerolls, so not quite the standard setup, I'd say, because that would be 4 Blitzers and 3 rerolls, if I'm not mistaken. And instead, we do see a Witch Elf right off the bat, so that's going to be interesting to see if that pays off in the long run. Next, we have the Grim Dark, a Skaven team coached by Starkweather, I assume it's pronounced, and I've already seen that he is fielding a Rat Ogre, which I personally find interesting, even though I struggle to use him. So this is pretty much the standard setup for Skaven. No, not even with a Rat Ogre. So he does not have a thrower, but instead 3 Gutter Runners, 2 Stormwomen, and the Rat Ogre, as well as 2 rerolls, so also light on the rerolls there. And that is going to be interesting, I think. Next up, we do have an undead team, Red Undead Redemption, and for everybody that does know Rockstar is probably aware where that name comes from. So let us take a look here. This is pretty much the standard though. So we have 2 whites, 2 mummies, 3 ghouls, and 2 zombies and 2 skeletons. The zombies and skeletons is a little bit of a debate, but it seems pretty standard. Also 3 rerolls. And they are coached by Marauder Shields. Let's not forget about that. Already, just 3 teams in and I'm already falling apart. Let's keep going. Next up we do have the Brittle Brutes, a Norse team coached by Lynx. And he starts with a Yeti. Not necessarily standard, but also not that unusual. 2 Ulfwurners, just 1 Berserker and a Thrower, which is fairly unusual, I'd say. You usually see runners over throwers, but we'll see how he can work with that. Also 2 rerolls and an Apothecary, so he is going the safety route, and starting with the Apothecary right off the bat might not be the worst idea, considering Norse do have pretty bad armor. Then we do have Triple Nelson, coached by Axino. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It is our second Dark Elf team. And let us see. This is more along the standard lines, I guess. 4 blitzers, a runner, and 2 rerolls again. I'm not sure if I'm not too versed with Dark Elves, but if he had stayed away from the runner, I think he could have gone for 3 rerolls. But it's still interesting as it is. I really don't know, because I don't play Dark Elves. Next we do have the Woodwind Players, a Wood Elf team, so my comrade in crime basically. Coached by, I can't pronounce that, Malifaux? I don't know Malifaux with an X, so it's with an ST, so I don't really know how to pronounce that. I like the jerseys though. So let's see, what do we have here? So 2 War Dancers. And the rest are all linemen, apparently, and 2 rerolls. Yes, okay. Next up we do have a High Elf team, Tall and Shiny, coached by Grabba. And I really apologize to everybody whose name I'm butchering, because I have no idea how to pronounce them. So let's see about this. He also starts with 2 rerolls, also for Fan Factor. I'm not really sure if that's going to be worth it or not. We're going to have to wait and see about that. Well, it's just going to influence some kickoff events, so I think those should usually not be done. But we'll see. So he starts with 2 catchers, 1 blitzer, as well as a thrower. And it's always difficult with the High Elves to get a lot of positionals early on. Because they're pretty expensive. Okay, and last but not least for Division 3, we do have the Biscuitville Farm Union, coached by Jeff McBiscuit. Oh yes, that's a mouthful. That whole tirade of names. So he is bringing to the pitch 1 reroll, just 1. That's surprising. Oh, he starts with 12 players though. Also an Apothecary. Then we do have 4 blockers, 4 blitzers, and the rest are linemen. And yeah, he does have an extra lineman. So this is a really confident setup, let's say like that. He doesn't have a lot of rerolls. He does have a lot of block starting skills, so it might pay off. But still, this is interesting, I'd say. And we'll see. So overall, not a whole lot of rerolls in this division. And we'll see how they will fare for themselves. So that was Division 3. Let us move on to Division 2 and check out the teams here. This division is a lot more bash heavy. So first off, we do have the Boneyard Hillbillies, who start off, I think, with pretty much the same setup as their counterparts, but just 2 ghouls in this case. So he's saving his money and chose to go for an extra zombie over that. Aside from that, it's still 3 rerolls, so nothing new there. And they are coached by Droixel, I assume it's pronounced. Next, we do have our second Norse team, American Snuff, coached by Brain on Slugs. Is that a Futurama reference? I assume so. And that bright orange is quite toxic. So, what do we have here? Yeah, one runner, two Ulf Werners, rest are linemen, as well as three rerolls and an apothecary, so a much more conservative approach, I'd say. He does have a little bit of frenzy, a ball carrier, and then a bunch of safety. So that's a little bit of a safer approach than the first Norse team that we saw. Next, we do have our second Lizardmen team overall, and that is Steven Spielberg and co. Coached by Porifol Z, or Z, wherever you're from and you want to pronounce it. I really don't care, because I don't actually, I think I'm more used to saying Z now than the Z. And I've already actually forgotten which is from where. It's fine. So, what do we have here? There's probably no big surprise. One Crocs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, nope, there's the sixth one. Number 6, Saurai. And then a bunch of skinks, as well as 2 rerolls, 1 fan factor, is that standard, and a coach assistant. So I usually wouldn't go for this, but save up for the apothecary first, but I think that's a matter of choice. It might influence a game or two, so not necessarily a bad thing. And I'm not going into the names and the puns, because that would just blow the name, the video out of proportion. But you can all see about the names so far, so there are a few good ones in there. And I'm not even going to try and pronounce this name. I know it's Spanish, because I asked Zaz75 what that language was, because I only speak English and German. And it's Spanish as far as I know, but I can't pronounce that, so I won't even try. And this is our third Norse team. So what do we see here? A Yeti again, one Ulf Werner, a Berserker, a Runner, both throwers, and that is it, as well as 3 rerolls. So once again we do see throwers, which, as I've said, are not that common in Norse teams, as far as I know at least. Okay, next we do have our first Chaos team, which was so far extremely absent from our league, but we do have 2 now, so there is 1 more to come. And this is pretty much the standard Chaos setup: 4 Chaos Warriors, 7 Beastmen, and 3 rerolls. Not a big surprise there. No Minotaur, which would put them down to 2 rerolls usually, and that's why Chaos seldom starts with a Minotaur, if at all. Okay, and they are coached by Ken, not to forget about that. And they're quite menacing in their black outfit. So let's move on. We do have our next Skaven team, Ratatonic, coached by the Lord of the Dance. So we have the High Lord Salt as well as the Lord of the Dance. If they ever meet, that's going to be interesting. And once again, a little bit of a toxic color, but they're Skaven, so it's fine. And here we do see the standard Skaven setup without the Red Ogre, which would mean all Gutter Runners, 2 Storm Vermin, a Thrower, as well as 3 rerolls and an Apo. So he's going the standard no big guy route with them, which is a good idea in my opinion. The Gutter Runner, the Red Ogre can work out very well as well, especially early on. But it can also be a bit of a problem. So we'll see how the individual teams progress there. Next up we do have another Orc team, which is just the Blork in the West, coached by Motley. And yes, I'm pronouncing every E. And what do we have here? A Thrower, 4 Blitzers, 4 Black Orcs, as well as 3 rolls. Since Cyanide had the brilliant idea, and this is no sarcasm, to revert their not-so-brilliant idea of increasing the cost of the Blitzers, Orcs can finally start with this roster again. Prior to a recent patch, or somewhat recent patch, they had increased the Blitzer cost by 10k, so you could only get 3 Blitzers if you wanted to have all Black Orcs. But now the costs are back down again, so Orcs can get this very solid setup. And last but not least, we do have a new human team, the Gentleman's Gentleman, coached by Dionys78, and he does start with an Ogre. That is interesting. And it always sounds so condescending when I say this. I haven't checked any of, I think maybe 1 or 2 of the teams prior to this video, so it's a new experience for me as well. And An ogre is nothing uncommon for a human team, but it's also not necessarily needed. So it's always interesting for me to see that, and so that's why I say it's interesting. And so he starts with 4 blitzers, a thrower, no catchers, which is a little bit unusual, I think, but is probably due to the ogre being in the starting roster, and also 3 rerolls. So that's pretty interesting. But he's probably going to focus on more of a running game early on, I assume, because he doesn't really have any catching skills whatsoever. Okay, so let us move on to Division 1. And here there's only 2 surprises, if you can say it like that. We do have 7 out of the 8 members from last season. And 1 player switched their teams while we do have our volunteer. So let's go through the teams. First off, we do have Kejiruzi with his Pondosaurus, returning once again because, as Eve put it, or I don't really know how he's put it, but he's waiting for the Necromantic team, and at that point I think he wants to switch. But for the time being, they are still recovering a bit from their ordeal. I'm not going to go into the positions here so much because the teams are already developed a bit, so there really is no use. Next up would be my team. It's a numbers game. The Wood Elves are also back, of course. And they're looking like this, and for everybody who didn't know already, I did take the plus movement allowance after all. Next we have Aoku and his Avengorks, and I probably still mispronounced that name, and it's really funny that the Black Hooks are in front and you can't even see the players behind. There are some goblins in this team, you wouldn't know it from this picture, maybe by those ears. Is that a goblin? I don't know. So he is pretty much an orc team. Next up we do have the Longfinger Jacks Raps Bretonian team. And he's no longer alone. There is another Bretonian team. And I myself am playing apparently. So, next up we do have Trailer Trashed High Lord Salt's Dwarf team, who made a bit of a comeback near the end of the season too. So let's see what they do in Season 3. And I'm still most worried about this team for obvious reasons. My poor little elves. Next up we have Dave, or Lydias, and his Greywood Guardians, who are coming along quite nicely. Especially this is worrisome, to say the least. The long bomb potential is quite real. So I'm going to skip the Skaven real quick. So Ibras switched away from his Norse team, and he started the Big Bogan Brigade, a Chaos team. So this is the second Chaos team we have, and that's quite the challenge, he said himself. Chaos early game are pretty weak, because they have no blocking skills whatsoever. Well, except horns, but that doesn't really count. So I'm really interested to see what he's going to do with this. So we'll see. And last but not least, we have the Crooked Ratlings, coached by James Typhoon, who's also starting things with a Rat Ogre, but only 2 Gutter Runners, and he does have 3 rerolls in this case. And I assume 11 players? 3, 6, 10, 11. Yes, okay. So this is going to be interesting, and he is playing an uphill battle as well. I did ask for volunteers. We had 2 players volunteer, both of which were Skaven, and I once again randomly chose one of them. And James Typhoon won or lost, however you want to look at it. But I think he will be up to the challenge, so we'll see what comes of this. So that would be all the teams, so the only thing left to do is to officially start the season. So let us go into the schedule of each map, of each division, and start the competitions, and then we're going to see who is going to play against whom. So this is pretty much it, and I really can't look too much and switch between back and forth to see who's who, but everybody that is watching this and is participating in the league, these are your first opponents, and have fun with this. So next up we have Division 2, and here we're going to start the competition as well. And last but not least, Division 1, where I can actually say a little bit about the first matchups. And so we're going to do so. So, Division 1, first match, I will be playing against Ibraz and his Big Bogan Brigade. Then we do have Orcs against Lizardmen, Bretonnians against our newly joined Skaven, as well as Orcs against, not Orcs, Dwarves against High Elves. So this one is going to be an interesting one as well, I assume. So overall, some interesting matchups. It maybe would have been a little bit friendlier or a little bit better if these two teams had started off against each other first, but Nuffle wasn't quite so nice. So yeah, that is the introduction for Season 3 of the Rekef League. I am very excited about this league, and I'm so happy that we grew that much, and I'm a little bit overwhelmed actually by it. And we're currently in the process of sorting everything out and writing an actual rule set for us that we can work with, and all that fun stuff. So we'll see how all of this develops, but I'm very happy about the start of this season now, and I'm hoping that everybody will be motivated and stay motivated and have a fun time and do their best to compete. So I guess this is where we're going to end the video. I thank you all very much for watching. I hope that you will stay tuned and watch the matches that are to come. I know that I am going to record my videos, and I'm probably going to live stream them from now on Twitch. That's something I've been thinking about. So if you want to see that, I'm going to announce that on Twitter probably when I'm going to play the matches. So it might be a good idea to follow me there and or on Twitch. The links for that are in the description. I assume that Dave is going to record his matches as well again, and he also announced that he wants to try and record as many of the other matches through the replay option to put up on his channel so that you can watch those as well. I hope he can manage that and pull that through. I don't know if anybody else is going to record their matches, so we're going to have to wait and see about that. But if I know that somebody's going to do that, I'm going to tell you about it in the first recap or so. So yeah, that's once again it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and a comment. And if you want to see us all play Blood Bowl, just stick around. And as always, thanks for watching. I hope that you tune in next time, and have a nice day. Bye.